Imagine a fortress designed to protect the wealth of nations. John F. Kennedy International Airport in 1978 is exactly that. It is a sprawling metropolis of concrete and steel, guarding billions of dollars in global trade. Yet on a freezing December morning, this impenetrable fortress suffers a catastrophic breach. Nearly $6 million simply vanishes into the cold winter air. This is not a story about a few armed thugs holding up a local bank. This is a meticulously engineered assault on the largest air transit hub in the United States. We are talking about $5 million in untraceable American currency. Another nearly $1 million in rare jewelry and gold is also taken. It remains one of the largest cash robberies in American history. The sheer scale of the theft leaves the Federal Bureau of Investigation completely stunned. Federal agents swarm the Lufthansa cargo terminal, expecting to find a massive tactical breach. Instead, they find a handful of terrified employees bound and gagged inside a secure vault. There are no signs of a massive firefight or explosive entries. The thieves bypass the entire security apparatus with chilling efficiency. To pull off a heist of this magnitude requires more than just heavy weaponry. It demands a level of internal knowledge that borders on the supernatural. The perpetrators knew exactly which cargo building to target. They knew the precise layout of the high-value vault. They even knew the specific schedules of the security guards on duty that specific morning. The stolen cash was unique because of its origin. It was money being returned to the United States from military bases and tourist exchanges in West Germany. This meant the bills were entirely unrecorded and completely untraceable. For a criminal organization, it was the absolute holy grail of heists. It was clean money, waiting to be claimed by anyone smart enough to take it. The airline believed their security protocols were absolutely flawless. They had armed guards and fortified doors protecting the cargo holding areas. However, the masterminds behind this operation understood a fundamental truth about security. The system is only as strong as the people who operate it. They found the human weakness and exploited it with surgical precision. This audacious crime was not planned in a sophisticated corporate boardroom. It was orchestrated in the dark and smoke-filled social clubs of the New York mafia. The Lucchese crime family recognized an unprecedented opportunity to strike at the heart of the American economy. They assembled a highly specialized crew of ruthless operators to execute a plan that seemed entirely impossible. How exactly did a crew of mobsters bypass the rigorous security of an international airport? How did they manage to load heavily guarded millions into a van and drive away completely unnoticed? The answers lie in a terrifying blend of insider information and brute force intimidation. The execution was terrifyingly fast, taking less than 64 minutes to complete. The Lufthansa heist completely shattered the illusion of safety at major transportation hubs. It sparked a massive federal manhunt that would ultimately lead to a horrifying trail of blood and betrayal. The money was never recovered, and the true cost of the robbery was paid in human lives. The perfect crime was about to descend into absolute madness. We will reconstruct every chilling moment of that fateful December morning. You will witness how a desperate gambling debt provided the key to the airport vault. The criminal underworld was about to score its greatest victory, but the price of that success would be devastating. The countdown to the robbery of the century begins now. This is a journey into the golden age of American organized crime. It showcases a moment when the mafia operated with absolute impunity right under the noses of federal authorities. The men involved thought they had secured early retirement and endless luxury. They had no idea they had just signed their own death warrants in the process. To truly grasp the magnitude of the Lufthansa heist, we must descend into the gritty underworld of late 1970s New York. The city was a breeding ground for organized crime, where powerful mafia families controlled everything from construction to narcotics. At the center of this particular storm was a ruthless operator named James Burke. He was an incredibly dangerous associate of the notorious Lucchese crime family. Burke was not a traditional mafia boss. Because of his Irish heritage, he could never officially become a made man within the Italian syndicate. However, his incredible ability to generate massive illicit profits made him untouchable. He was a master manipulator who utilized a terrifying combination of charm and extreme violence to maintain absolute control over his crew. He was always hunting for the next big score. The seeds for the airport robbery were planted completely by accident in a local tavern. A bookmaker associated with Burke had a very problematic client who owed massive gambling debts. This client was a man named Louis Werner. Werner was not a hardened criminal, but rather a disgruntled cargo worker employed by Lufthansa at the Kennedy Airport. His severe gambling addiction made him desperate and highly vulnerable. Werner owed thousands of dollars he simply could not pay back. To save his own life, he offered his dangerous creditors something far more valuable than cash. He offered them the ultimate golden ticket. Werner possessed intimate knowledge of the Lufthansa high-value cargo vault. He knew exactly how the millions of untraceable dollars were shipped, stored, and guarded. He handed Burke the blueprint to an absolute fortune. James Burke immediately recognized the unprecedented potential of this insider information. The vault regularly held massive shipments of American currency returning from West German exchanges. It was a river of untraceable cash, flowing directly through a poorly defended cargo terminal. Burke began assembling a highly specialized crew to execute the raid. He selected only the most ruthless and experienced thieves from his trusted inner circle. The intelligence provided by Werner was breathtakingly detailed. He explained that the vault required a two-key system to open securely. He mapped out the precise locations of the silent alarms and the security cameras. Most importantly, he revealed a fatal flaw in the parking logistics of the cargo terminal. There was a specific loading dock that was completely obscured from public view during the early morning hours. This was not a plan built on guesswork or brute force. It was a surgical strike, designed around exploiting a perfectly illuminated target. Burke spent weeks refining the logistics and running terrifyingly precise drills with his men. They procured untraceable stolen vehicles and gathered heavy weapons to ensure absolute compliance from the airport staff. The level of meticulous preparation was completely unprecedented for a standard mafia crew. The motivation driving this incredible effort was pure, unadulterated greed. For Burke and his associates, a successful heist meant a lifetime of luxurious impunity. They viewed the airport not as a secure federal facility, but as their own personal bank account. The sheer arrogance of the New York mafia during this era fueled their belief that they could steal millions and simply walk away untouched. As the freezing December winter settled over the city, the final pieces of the puzzle fell perfectly into place. Werner confirmed that a massive shipment of cash had just arrived in the Lufthansa vault. The target was ripe, and the crew was heavily armed and ready to strike. James Burke gave the final order, setting the most audacious robbery in American history into violent motion. The stage was set for a 64-minute masterclass in criminal execution. The men preparing to breach the airport had absolutely no idea they were about to trigger a historic bloodbath. They only saw the flashing promise of endless riches waiting inside a dark concrete room. The phantom of the perfect heist was about to materialize into a terrifying reality at John F. Kennedy Airport. The clock strikes 3 in the freezing early morning hours of December 11, 1978. A black Ford Econoline van quietly rolls into the desolate cargo area of John F. Kennedy Airport. Inside the vehicle, 6 heavily armed men sit in absolute silence. They wear dark clothing and ski masks to conceal their identities. They possess the internal blueprints and the exact knowledge needed to breach the Lufthansa cargo terminal. The execution of the heist begins with the ruthless severing of all external communication. Using bolt cutters, the crew neutralizes the padlock on the perimeter fence and slides the van near the loading dock. 2 gunmen quietly slip inside the facility and locate the senior cargo agent. They strike him with the butt of a shotgun to immediately establish absolute dominance. Fear instantly replaces the quiet routine of the night shift. The remaining crew members swarm the terminal with terrifying speed and military precision. They round up the remaining employees and force them face down onto the cold concrete floor. The thieves confiscate all wallets to identify the victims and their families. They explicitly threaten to visit their homes if anyone decides to play the hero or contact the police later. This psychological warfare ensures total compliance from the terrified hostages. With the staff neutralized, the crew forces the senior agent to initiate the complex vault opening procedure. The insider information provided by Werner proves to be flawlessly accurate. The gunmen know exactly which buttons to press and which secure doors require the specialized double-key system. They navigate the high-security labyrinth without triggering a single silent alarm. The supposedly impenetrable fortress is dismantled from the inside within mere minutes. The heavy steel door of the high-value vault swings open to reveal a staggering fortune. The thieves are greeted by dozens of sealed boxes containing millions of dollars in untraceable currency. They work with the frantic energy of men who know their lives depend on absolute speed. They form a human chain, passing the heavy boxes of cash and jewelry from the secure vault directly into the waiting black van. The sheer volume of the stolen wealth is almost too much for the vehicle to hold. They stack the boxes to the ceiling, maximizing every available inch of cargo space. The robbers also discover a significant cache of rare jewels and gold, adding another $1 million to their incredible haul. They operate like a well-oiled machine, entirely focused on the singular goal of extracting the maximum amount of treasure. This incredibly violent choreography takes exactly 64 minutes to complete. The crew has successfully stolen nearly $6 million without firing a single bullet. They order the bound hostages to remain on the floor for 15 minutes before calling the police. To enforce this command, they threaten to wait outside and shoot anyone who disobeys. The phantom robbers then climb back into their loaded van and quietly drive away. They slip seamlessly into the dark morning traffic of the New York highway system. The greatest airport robbery in American history has been executed with horrifying perfection. James Burke and his crew have achieved the ultimate criminal victory right under the noses of federal authorities. They possess enough stolen cash to rival the budgets of small nations. The men inside the van believe they have just secured their absolute freedom. Back at the terminal, the terrified employees finally manage to trigger the alarm. Police sirens soon shatter the quiet morning, but the delay is more than enough for the thieves. The black van has vanished completely, leaving behind only empty shelves and traumatized workers. The masterminds have pulled off an impossible feat by weaponizing insider knowledge against a billion-dollar security apparatus. The hunt for the missing millions is about to begin. The perfect crime exists only in theory, because human error is an absolute certainty. The Lufthansa heist was executed flawlessly inside the terminal, but the escape plan contained a fatal weakness. The crew successfully transferred the stolen millions from the black van to a secondary vehicle at a secure location. The original van was then entrusted to a minor associate named Parnell Edwards. His single job was to completely destroy the vehicle. Edwards was supposed to drive the van to a New Jersey junkyard and crush it into unrecognizable scrap metal. This action would erase all physical evidence connecting the robbers to the airport. Instead, he decided to visit his girlfriend and parked the highly incriminating vehicle right on a public street. He got high on marijuana and fell fast asleep, leaving the ultimate piece of evidence completely exposed to the world. 2 days later, patrol officers noticed the illegally parked black Ford Econoline van. A quick check of the license plates instantly connected the vehicle to the massive airport robbery dominating national news. Crime scene investigators swarmed the van and recovered crucial fingerprints, including those belonging to known mafia associates. The invisible phantom thieves had just left a massive blazing beacon pointing directly toward their secret criminal syndicate. The Federal Bureau of Investigation immediately launched a relentless and aggressive campaign against the Lucchese crime family. Helicopters shadowed suspected crew members from the sky, while agents tapped their phones and surveilled their social clubs. The sheer magnitude of the stolen $6 million meant the federal government would never stop hunting them. The quiet luxury the thieves had imagined quickly transformed into a suffocating and terrifying nightmare of constant surveillance. James Burke watched his brilliant masterpiece unravel rapidly because of one incredibly stupid mistake. The intense police pressure created an atmosphere of absolute paranoia within his inner circle. Burke knew that the federal agents were offering lucrative immunity deals to anyone willing to testify against him. The captured van meant the authorities possessed physical evidence capable of destroying his entire empire and sending him to federal prison for life. The narrative of the Lufthansa heist shifts violently here from a clever robbery to a horrific psychological thriller. Burke realized that a secret is only safe when everyone who knows it is dead. The stolen millions were meant to buy absolute freedom, but instead they purchased a tidal wave of paranoia and violence. The mastermind decided to protect his stolen fortune by systematically eliminating every single vulnerability within his crew. Parnell Edwards was naturally the very first target on the assassination list. He had failed his simple task and directly endangered the entire operation. Hitmen visited his apartment and executed him silently, effectively cutting the most obvious link to the getaway vehicle. This initial murder was not an act of passion but a cold and calculated business decision. It marked the terrifying beginning of a historic mafia bloodbath. The elimination of Edwards did not ease the crushing pressure from the federal government. The investigators continued to tighten their grip on the syndicate, pulling in associates for aggressive questioning. The remaining crew members began to panic, making flashy purchases with their stolen cash despite strict orders to lay low. Their reckless greed only confirmed their guilt to the watching federal agents and further fueled the deadly paranoia of their boss. James Burke crossed a psychological point of no return as he watched his men attract unwanted attention. He concluded that loyalty was a myth, and the only guarantee of silence was the grave. The mastermind who had orchestrated a bloodless robbery was now preparing to unleash unprecedented carnage upon his own loyal soldiers. The greatest heist in American history was rapidly devolving into a gruesome marathon of slaughter and betrayal. The stolen $6 million sat hidden in the dark while the men who stole it began to turn on each other. The authorities watched the syndicate devour itself from the inside out. The brilliant execution at the airport was completely overshadowed by the chaotic and murderous aftermath. The hunters were closing in, but the ultimate predator was already busy tearing his own pack to bloody pieces. The aftermath of the Lufthansa heist transforms into a gruesome spectacle of betrayal and murder. James Burke orchestrates a ruthless cleansing of his own criminal enterprise to sever all connections to the stolen millions. Over the next several months, nearly a dozen individuals associated with the robbery simply disappear or meet violently brutal ends. The streets of New York become a quiet graveyard for anyone who knows too much about the airport vault. Hitmen hunt down the careless robbers who foolishly spent their new wealth on luxury cars and expensive jewelry. Bodies are discovered frozen in meat trucks or stuffed inside the trunks of abandoned vehicles across the city. Some associates simply vanish entirely, leaving behind grieving families and a trail of absolute terror. The mastermind calculates that dead men cannot negotiate immunity deals with the relentless federal investigators closing in on his empire. The staggering scale of the bloodshed shocks even the most hardened detectives investigating the original cargo theft. The Federal Bureau of Investigation realizes they are no longer just chasing stolen currency but investigating a massive serial extermination. Burke effectively paralyzes the judicial process by systematically removing every single key witness before they can testify. The brilliant architect of the robbery is now the bloody executioner of his own loyal crew. Lewis Werner, the desperate cargo worker who provided the crucial insider intelligence, meets a different but equally tragic fate. He is one of the very few individuals actually convicted for his role in the spectacular crime. The mafia completely abandons him the moment he is arrested, leaving him to face the full wrath of the federal government alone. He serves years in prison while the men he enriched continue their deadly game. Despite the massive body count and the relentless federal pressure, James Burke is never officially charged with the Lufthansa robbery. The authorities eventually secure his permanent imprisonment through convictions for unrelated crimes, including murder and sports bribery. He dies behind bars carrying the ultimate secrets of the airport heist to his grave. The ruthless kingpin wins the silence he desired, but loses his freedom in the violent process. The legacy of this incredible event transcends the criminal underworld and permeates global pop culture completely. Director Martin Scorsese immortalizes the terrifying aftermath in his cinematic masterpiece Goodfellas. The film perfectly captures the intoxicating thrill of the initial robbery and the devastating paranoia that follows. It cements the Lufthansa heist as the ultimate cautionary tale about the toxic intersection of unimaginable wealth and ruthless organized crime. Nearly half a century has passed since that freezing December morning at John F. Kennedy Airport. The stolen $6 million in cash and rare jewels remains entirely unaccounted for to this day. The money likely filtered through legitimate businesses or vanished into offshore accounts managed by shadowy figures. The massive physical fortune evaporated, leaving behind only empty cargo boxes and a deeply traumatized aviation industry. Modern air transit security is built directly upon the bitter lessons learned during those fatal 64 minutes. The concept of relying on simple padlocks and vulnerable human guards is entirely obsolete. Today, heavily armored facilities utilize biometric scanners and constant digital surveillance to protect global wealth. The phantom thieves inadvertently forced the creation of the impenetrable fortresses we see at major transportation hubs across the modern world. We often romanticize the concept of the perfect heist, where brilliant outlaws outsmart the rigid system. The true story of Lufthansa shatters that glamorous illusion with an unrelenting barrage of brutal reality. It proves that stealing the money is always the easiest part of the criminal equation. Surviving the overwhelming greed and the deadly paranoia that follows is the truly impossible challenge for any mastermind. The ghosts of 1978 still haunt the dark corners of the New York criminal underworld. They serve as a grim reminder that absolute loyalty is an illusion when millions of untraceable dollars are involved. The greatest robbery in American history ends not with a triumphant celebration but in a shallow, unmarked grave. The phantom of the Lufthansa heist continues to echo through time, leaving a chilling legacy written in blood.